All right, so welcome back. We are building a Shader Doodle based application. We're calling it Space Doodle because, I'm in space and all, so why not call it Space Doodle? Anyway, so far we've built out a lot of our, the visual look of our application. We lay down all of our HTML and CSS, and this is what we have so far. It's honestly looking like a pretty complete app until you interact with it. And there's nothing really to interact with other than the components that aren't wired up yet. So the other thing we accomplished in the very first step was we put together a front-end tooling workflow where we have TypeScript running. We're importing CSS files right into our lit element component, our application component here. This is courtesy of Web Dev Server using a plugin called Rollup Plugin Lit CSS. So again, we're not actually importing CSS right into our browser. We're using Web Dev Server to wrap it with some lit goodness and make it lit compatible, just so we can import it right into our application and set the style right here. So what's next? So one of the easy things we can do right away is, make this text editable. So let's do that. And so to do that, we can just set content editable on this text editor box. So content editable, and my IDE is telling me it can be false or true. I'm just gonna say content editable, and here we are. We can start editing this text. So yeah, this will be our text over the GIF that we're gonna make. So I guess we're making memes. I don't even know anymore. I think there are much cooler uses for Shader Doodle, but I just like seeing every feature we could possibly have wrapped up in this little app here. So let's continue on. And now, speaking of Shader Doodle, we actually do need to bring Shader Doodle in. Remember, this is just a linear gradient here, and we're kind of faking what Shader Doodle would look like. But let's bring it in now. And here, over in our package.json, we're going to add Shader Doodle. This is going to be the alpha. It's going to be the new stuff, the stuff that's really fun to work with. And now going over to Doodle.ts, which is, it's our only component in this project. It's our main application component. First of all, let's get rid of this background, this linear gradient. So because we're not going to be faking Shader Doodle anymore, we're actually going to add it. And then in our Shader Doodle container, let's add Shader Doodle. And so we need to give it a fragment shader. Now Shader Doodle, it defaults to a really common vertex shader. So we're not going to worry about that right now. So I'm going to use this basic Shader Doodle example that we saw before. It's just some colors shifting over a square. And so it's going to be really simple, but we're going to see something. And of course, we need to import Shader Doodle so it actually registers as an element. And here it is. It's working pretty well. We can even edit text over this. Hi from space. Now, as you might imagine, this is not going to be our only shader that we're going to use. We're going to use a few different shaders. So let's make a variable. We'll call it shader. And of course, because we're in TypeScript, it's going to be a protected variable. We don't need to be public. So let's say, let's take this entire script tag and add it here. And we'll fill it in using this.shader. So let's reload that. And it's not working. Now, there's a very good reason for this. Let's inspect this. So now when we open up the Shader Doodle component, we see that all the stuff we just added, it's being treated as a string. We don't want that. You might even say we're injecting unsafe HTML into the Shader Doodle DOM. So Lit just wants to treat this as a string because it's trying to be safe. It's trying not to inject bad things into this, bad random HTML into our component. So it's being good here, but this isn't what we want. We're going to be a little unsafe here. We're going to use unsafe HTML from Lit. So unsafe HTML is actually a directive. So directives, yeah, they're this type of kind of plugin or this escape hatch you can use in Lit when you need that something extra that Lit just doesn't support, and it would either make something like this work or, you want to make some convenience function that makes your life better as a developer. So directives are great. They're kind of fun to work with, honestly. If you want to nerd out, of course. All that said, though, what I really want to do is not have that one variable. What I want to do is add an entire list of shaders, and I'm going to keep those in a different file. And luckily, I have all of those shaders in one file that I can just copy in here. So let's take a quick peek. Because it's TypeScript, of course, we have to give things an interface, otherwise TypeScript will complain. But yeah, in this new shaders.ts file, each shader we have is an object with an ID, a name, the fragment we're going to use, or the vertex shader we're going to use. And most of them are going to use this default vertex shader. So let's use this instead. And we'll use it just by importing the shader we want to use from the shaders.ts file. And now I'm going to replace this variable we just added with our new import. And actually, I wanted to show off the unsafe HTML here, just to show it is a good escape hatch if this type of thing does come up. But I'm kind of reworking this, and we don't really need that anymore. We're going to have the script tag right here and not controlled by lit. And so here we're importing that gradient shader. We could import any number of other shaders. We have wavy cam, lava, fractal pyramid, a bunch of them. So we could use any number of these, and these will get into our combo box, our picker. Now with Shader Doodle showing us something, a good start, let's move on to our code editor. So we want to show what the actual shader code is that we're using in both the fragment and vertex shaders. So I was looking around and trying to find different code editors, and I found something called Lit Code, which, you know, I thought it would be a good bet since I'm using Lit. Being a web component, we probably wouldn't have any problems with it anyway. So yeah, here's Lit Code on NPM. Let's just go to this demo. The reason I like this, it kind of highlights in different colors, different parts of your code, so it's a lot easier to read, just like if you were working in a real code editor. And of course, it offers dark mode as well. So, you know, it works perfectly for what we need. So let's get Lit Code installed just by adding it to our package.json here. We'll install it. Now, being a web component, it's going to be super easy to pop in with some caveats, of course. So we're adding the lit code component. We're giving it an ID so we can reference it in the future. We're telling it the language is JS. Now, hold that thought. We'll come back to this. And we're going to make it show line numbers. And the code is going to be the gradient shader. And of course, the fragment part of it. So the fragment is right here in shaders.ts. So this is the fragment piece. And so yeah, this is what we're going to show in lit code right here as the text. We want to show the vertex shader as well. And of course, as a last step, let's import lit code. So let's see what happens when we look at this. Now, the text is right? So we can open up these accordion items and see we have the vertex shader and the fragment shader. That's pretty nice. But the code isn't being colored like we see in the demo right here. So what gives? Well, we have to read the finer details. And those finer details are that it's based on something called Prism. So Prism Js is the thing that offers language support and will color in, you know, the different aspects, the syntax of your code. And look at all of the languages it does offer. This is crazy. But the core languages it offers are markup, CSS, C-like languages, and JavaScript. The rest are controlled with a plugin, and it does offer HLSL, and that's the shader language. We could use that, but I found that it looks a lot like JavaScript when I did try it out myself. I don't think it's worth the work to get the plugin installed for HLSL when JavaScript just seems to be fine and look correct. So that's why we're passing it in the language equals JS here. But of course, the problem is we haven't installed or imported Prism Js yet. So let's do that right in our package.json. So let's go back to doodle.ts and add Prism Js. Now for this import right here, I don't think Prism Js is actually an ESM package. It's not a module. It just runs the side effects in the import itself and allows it to attach itself to the window. So basically our entire browser right now is Prism Js capable. So let's try this out and see if it changes anything. And it does. Our code is colored now, but of course it's not dark mode. So let's add some CSS vars right now to make this into dark mode. I did a little hunting around on their demo page and inspected their code a little bit, just try to find how you could do this. And I kind of copied those colors over from the demo to this application Took me a little bit of work, but it wasn't too bad. So let's add that in our doodle.css right now. So as you can see, we're changing, several different aspects of things here. Keywords, functions, punctuation, all these little segments of the code that need to be colored to make it look like a code editor. As our page refreshes, we can see that it is dark mode. It is coloring all our code like it should, courtesy of Prism Js. And so this is pretty great. We have the ability, because it's a code editor, we have the ability to edit all of this code. It's not gonna be pushed up to a shader just yet because we're not quite there. But you can see how we could use this to edit our shaders. This is pretty powerful, I think. It's powerful, of course, until you do the wrong thing on a shader, because shaders are hard to work with and you break everything. So that's the downside. So I think this is a good time to pause, and in the next step we'll start wiring even more stuff up. But in the meantime, we have a bunch of stuff we can start playing with. We can add shaders, we can edit text, we can edit code. Yeah, I'm liking this so far. Check back in the next step, we'll go even further.